Good morning and welcome to First Take. Normally, our friend Molly Qerim would greet you. However, Molly announced last night she will be departing from ESPN. Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement.
Molly Qerim's unexpected move to NBC was not just a surprise to ESPN. It followed years of pent-up resentment, quiet health struggles, and rifts in her personal life, as well as a resignation letter. You will be shocked at what comes next after seeing what NBC offered her, and the secret cost that ultimately forced her to quit, the startling departure that no one anticipated. They said it was impossible. They claimed that Molly Qerim, the anchor who initially took over when Stephen A. Smith turned up the volume, was the face of ESPN mornings. However, Molly has now signed with NBC in a startling turn of events that ESPN management did not anticipate, and there is nothing but turmoil as a result. Take a moment to consider that. A lady who has been the morning title holder for years, and one of ESPN's most well-known figures abruptly switching to a rival network? Not only is this a career move, but it is a complete earthquake that has ESPN's senior executives frantically trying to find answers. Inside Bristol, there are whispers of panic that are not subtle. For the first time in more than 10 years, ESPN is losing leverage in addition to talent. What is the worst? NBC did not simply make her a deal offer, according to insiders. They offered Molly a contract worth millions more than her previous one, complete editorial independence and primetime attention, things ESPN was never able to provide. Deals like this cause even seasoned veterans like Stephen A. to reevaluate their true allegiance. It is a typical September 2025 Monday morning. America's sports enthusiasts are getting settled with their coffee and getting ready for their daily fix of intense disputes, contentious debates, and the kind of sports commentary that makes you want to eat before you have even eaten breakfast. They anticipate seeing the same person who has welcomed them for almost 10 years when they flip on ESPN's premier morning program, First Take. However, something is amiss, something is unusual. One of the most well-known ladies in sports journalism has taken the chair, yet it is noticeably empty.
Good morning and welcome to First Take. Normally, our friend Molly Qerim would greet you. However, Molly announced last night she will be departing from ESPN.
On a clear day, the announcement struck the sports world like a thunderbolt. The 41-year-old sportscaster Molly Qerim, who had spent 10 years steering First Take's ship through contentious disputes, was no longer there. Not when the season is coming to a close. Not after a formal farewell tour. Gone. Immediately. In effect, immediately. The whispers, conjecture, and dramatic headlines start to swirl like a Category 5 hurricane at this point, though, and our story takes an even more dramatic turn. The truth behind Molly Qerim's departure is far more complicated, far more nuanced, and frankly, far more revealing about the competitive nature of the sports media industry than any straightforward "she got a better offer" narrative could ever convey. This is in contrast to the internet's flurry of rumors that she had signed a huge deal with NBC Sports, which left Disney shareholders in complete shock and ESPN executives scrambling. Let us travel back in time and see how we arrived at this point. Because Molly Qerim's departure from ESPN represents more than just a single broadcaster switching networks. It is an excellent lesson in business negotiations, professional deference, personal leverage, and the harsh realities that even the most prosperous media professionals encounter when their contracts are up for renewal. On September 15, 2025, during ESPN's Monday Night Football doubleheader, the chronology starts. Ben Karp, a reporter for the Sports Business Journal, released a bombshell that would dwarf any touchdown, any incredible catch, or any game-winning field goal while millions of people watch two NFL teams compete on the field. According to his story, Molly Qerim was scheduled to depart ESPN at the end of 2025. According to insiders, the network had offered her a contract, but she decided not to accept it. These days, contract talks are a regular occurrence in the sports media industry. Stars use their fame to negotiate better prices. Choosing who stays and who leaves is a difficult issue for networks. This is how things naturally work, and how the television industry operates. The timing and manner of the information's release, however, were what made this specific leak so explosive and had an impact that had never been seen before. You see, the very following day, Qerim herself sent a statement on Instagram expressing her deep unhappiness with the way the news had been reported. "Consider it for a moment," she said in her own words. This was a professional broadcaster who had worked for one of the world's most prominent sports networks for almost 20 years, and she was not even given the opportunity to go on her own terms. Her hand had been forced in the most awkward way by the leak. According to reports, ESPN has determined that Qerim will leave First Take by the end of any contract negotiations. To increase her versatility inside the organization, the network had already started looking into other positions, but it was obvious that the parties could not agree on conditions that worked for everyone. Instead, it turned into a clumsy, hastened disaster. The changeover should have been meticulously planned, complete with farewell episodes, tribute packages, and maybe even a retrospective of her best moments moderating the show. Although videos featuring Stephen A. Smith criticizing Molly Qerim after she signs a big new contract with NBC Sports have received hundreds of thousands of views, a thorough examination of reliable news sources shows that there is no solid proof that Molly Qerim has ever signed a contract with NBC. I will say it again for emphasis because it is important to know the difference between what happened and what the internet rumor mill would have you believe. She began by working behind the scenes on digital and mobile platforms, interviewing athletes and celebrities for ESPN.com and ESPN Mobile, just like many other gifted broadcasters do. At the time, networks were still figuring out how to translate their success on television into the digital sphere, and online sports media was booming in the mid-2000s. She was selected as First Take's temporary host in a matter of weeks. Then on September 15, 2015, she was promoted to permanent host, becoming the first female host in the show's history. This was no token gesture or feel-good diversity hire. Through years of dedication, several network experiences, and a demonstrated capacity to manage the high-pressure atmosphere of live television, Qerim had earned her spot. First Take experienced tremendous growth while she was hosting, including a January 2017 switch from ESPN2 to ESPN that increased ratings by 12% in the first 3 days. Because it created viral moments, trending themes, and the kind of fervent conversation that networks and advertisers adore, the show became a must-watch television program for sports enthusiasts. This success was largely due to Qerim's function as the moderator, the voice of reason in a sea of heated opinions and heated arguments. Why, however, were ESPN and Molly Qerim unable to agree on a new deal with all of that background? 10 years of demonstrated success, and a resume that would make most broadcasters green with envy. Uncomfortable facts regarding the sports media industry are revealed by a complex web of circumstances that hold the answer. On his podcast, former ESPN presenter Marcellus Wiley put up his theory that Qerim desired greater creative freedom, particularly the chance to host her own program. ESPN rejected her proposal, citing her primary worth as a moderator rather than as a showrunner, according to Wiley's sources and conjecture. However, that was not the only issue. In addition, Wiley claimed that Qerim was underappreciated in comparison to some of her co-workers and asked for a large pay raise. Think about this situation. According to reports, Stephen A. Smith agreed to a 5-year contract extension of $105 million, or about $21 million annually. Now, no one is arguing that Smith, who is probably the face of ESPN's whole sports debate programming, should have been paid more than Qerim, but should not that be worth something significant when you are the host of the network's most popular morning show, have been doing the job flawlessly for 10 years, and are the one who keeps the show running smoothly while the analysts squabble with one another? When you take into account rumors that other ESPN celebrities, such as Mina Kimes, supposedly make more money than Qerim while not presenting the main morning show, the discrepancy becomes even more obvious. It is challenging to confirm whether these wage comparisons are really correct. The impression of being undervalued in comparison to peers can be just as detrimental to negotiations as actual salary discrepancies. But networks protect compensation information like Fort Knox protects gold. According to Burke Magnus, ESPN had previously determined that Qerim would leave the first team before the end of the year, regardless of the terms of the contract. Without making a commitment to either internal or external candidates, they intended to hold 30-45 days of on-air auditions for a new host. This was not an attempt at compromise. This was ESPN's real strategy. They believed that the host job was interchangeable, and that many competent broadcasters could take over without significantly affecting the show's attractiveness. And now is the time to confront the unspoken issue surrounding the NBC contract rumors. Although Molly Qerim's departure from ESPN garnered much of the news, a full picture necessitates going beyond network politics and contract issues. In order to fully understand Molly Qerim and her journey to the pinnacles of sports broadcasting, we must examine the relationship difficulties, personal hardships, public scandals, and private health conflicts that have influenced her. Because the woman who spent 10 years in that first host chair was doing more than just moderating discussions and reading teleprompters. The majority of spectators were unaware of the struggles she was engaged in. Molly Ann Qerim was born on March 31, 1984 at Yale New Haven Hospital in Connecticut. She was raised in a multicultural family in the Cheshire suburbs. Her father is Albanian, while her mother is of Italian Catholic heritage. She received a Bachelor of Arts in Communications with a minor in Business Administration from the University of Connecticut. And then she went on to Quinnipiac University to obtain a master's degree in broadcast journalism. Her media career was paved with these credentials, but they were unable to prepare her for the personal struggles that would put her fortitude to the test in a way that no classroom could. Qerim's battle with endometriosis has been the most significant and continuous personal struggle in her life, and it is at this point that her story becomes both professionally and personally inspiring. At the age of 26, Qerim received a stage 4 endometriosis diagnosis somewhere between 2010 and 2011. The most severe stage of this illness is stage 4, in which tissue resembling the lining of the uterus grows outside the uterus, spreading to other organs and resulting in problems and crippling agony. Qerim's liver and intestines were among the organs where the endometriosis had progressed. Her already terrible symptoms were exacerbated when a cyst burst, releasing poisons throughout her body. Unfortunately, endometriosis frequently results in a delayed diagnosis. Since symptoms like persistent pain are usually written off as typical menstrual discomfort, it sometimes takes 6 to 10 years to diagnose the problem. Qerim recognized in retrospect that symptoms she had accepted for years, such as persistent exhaustion, lack of energy even after a full night's sleep, and a sense of not having the vibrancy a woman in her 20s ought to have, were all warning signs of this dangerous illness. Her acknowledgement of the reasons behind her initial silence regarding her illness, however, was possibly the most illuminating. She was worried that discussing a gynecological ailment in public could harm her career in the male-dominated sports media sector. Consider the implications of a successful professional woman feeling compelled to conceal a major medical problem, since doing so could give the impression that she is weak or untrustworthy to executives and other colleagues. She eventually gained the confidence to tell her story in public by going to events like the 2018 Blossom Ball, hosted by the Endometriosis Foundation of America, intending to motivate research funding and encourage other women. Over the course of more than 10 years, the treatment process has been drawn out and challenging, requiring numerous procedures. During Endometriosis Awareness Month in March 2025, Qerim disclosed that she had had a third major operation, which she described as extremely delicate and challenging. Dr. Masahide Kanayama of the New York Endometriosis Center carried out the treatment, which she described as a response to 12 years of praying. Let us now discuss her romantic life, which also took place in the public eye, complete with all the complexities that accompany being a famous figure. The most important relationship Qerim had was with Jalen Rose, a fellow ESPN commentator and former NBA player. After meeting through their jobs at ESPN, the couple first announced their romance to the public in June 2016. They seemed to be a natural fit because they were both successful broadcasters navigating the same field and were aware of the stresses and expectations of live television. For a while, they appeared to be one of the power couples in sports media after getting married in a private ceremony in New York City on July 20th, 2018. However, the marriage was short-lived, about 3 years. The couple had been apart for about a year before Rose filed for divorce, according to a December 2021 TMZ Sports report. However, the conjecture offers an intriguing insight into the public's perception of relationships in the workplace, particularly amongst prosperous individuals in prominent roles. Drama-hungry viewers scrutinize and interpret every humorous exchange and apparent tense moment through a love prism. But if we are discussing drama and scandal, we must also talk about the instances that have put Qerim in awkward spotlight on occasion over the course of her career. The most dramatic was the LeVar Ball incident in June 2019, which turned into a case study on racial dynamics, workplace boundaries, and allegations of discrimination. Qerim said, "LeVar, can I switch gears with you because I have a different topic I want to get to?" While Ball was talking about his son Lonzo being traded to the New Orleans Pelicans during a June 17, 2019 First Take appearance. "You can change gears with me at any time," Ball replied. Qerim said, "Okay, that is enough," seeming uneasy, and later said he thought the remark was improper. Citing a zero-tolerance policy for such comments, ESPN barred Ball from making any more appearances. However, the punishment generated a lot of controversy, with some claiming Qerim overreacted, and that Ball's remark was harmless. When activist Tariq Nasheed resurrected old footage of Qerim making her own sexually suggestive remarks on television, the situation became even more difficult, asking the male hosts if this is good while provocatively dancing. Among other provocative remarks, she is described as having a sculpture-like body behind layers. Qerim frequently started sexualized conversation, but then claimed victimhood when a black man made a similar remark, according to Nasheed, who said this pattern demonstrated hypocrisy. Her husband at the time, Jalen Jalen Rose, vehemently supported her on his podcast, labeling detractors as idiots and contending that Ball's speech and tone went too far. The dispute brought to light difficult questions about what constitutes appropriate behavior in the workplace, who gets to decide what is objectionable, and how racial dynamics impact these interpretations. Subsequently, the 2023 controversy exposed various fault lines. On the first take, Qerim supported UFC President Dana White after he was seen on camera slapping his wife, arguing that we do not know the whole story and rejecting calls for his resignation. She was criticized for using unfair standards, pointing out that she had criticized black sportsmen for minor transgressions with speed. It was not a subtle charge. She was accused of holding black men to far higher standards while capping for a powerful white executive. A person who has negotiated difficult waters throughout her career is depicted by these and other controversies, including awkward on-air moments with Stephen A. Smith, allegations of bias against black athletes, and assertions that her position was influenced by her marriage to Jalen Rose rather than merit alone. These incidents, whether warranted or not, have influenced Qerim's public image just as much as her career achievements. And it seems likely that Stephen A. Smith is correct. Molly Qerim is going to be all right. She participated in a quanda with men's basketball coach Dan Hurley at a UConn event in late September 2025, marking her first public appearance after ESPN, was a gentle comeback to the spotlight and a reminder that her worth and significance transcend any one network or program, regardless of whether she signs the rumored $2 million contract with Fox Sports, starts her own digital platform, or chooses a whole different route. With the lessons learned from 10 years at the top of sports broadcasting and a lifetime of conquering challenges that would have crushed lesser people, Molly Cam's journey is definitely far from over. Thank you for reading. The next chapter will be written on her terms. To view more related content, click on one of the boxes that is playing on your screen if you liked this video.